Hi, um, I am Luden, artist Luden, and I'm gonna make this small little video to help um, with this user I found on Reddit. Their name is Pixie Pop underscore bug, and this is their post. Um, does this look super unoriginal? Second post is my trace and shading are friends. This was my first attempt at digital art, and I can't see faces really well, so I need to have a base for drawing, at least for now. Is it too traced? I feel like I really can't say it's my art because it's traced, so it feels like I just copied something. Everything in the art is drawn though, none of the parts of the original piece. How can I trace so it feels more like my work? I'm also up to suggestions on how to lessen my use of tracing. Please keep in mind I can't see faces that well. My other thing is this. For some reason, my art feels really fake or something. Can someone please point out trouble spots too? Lastly, my work feels really familiar. Is it someone else's art style or am I just saying that because I traced? We'll just look at the two images. This is their art, and this is the image they traced. So it's not bad. It's not too bad. Um, and I have set up on here. Now, usually when I trace art, I do so for poses, and we can see that you did a pretty good job, I would say, with tracing. But overall, it does feel like there are multiple styles going on at one time, and I think that is a big issue for what you are like facing regarding um, it looking unoriginal or unlike your own. Like for example, where you have these really big thick lines down here, like on this part. Uh, these lines are so like thick, and they're really weird compared to the really thin lines you have on the dress, and then the no lines you have on the skin. So I think first you should pick what sort of line work you want to go with or what you're most comfortable with, and then sort of go from there. I would say with how your art looks right now, I would suggest doing line art for bodies and for everything like that, just because it will help you learn how to shade and how to express anatomy without having to like fully um, like render out everything. Another thing is it does look like you're shading with black, and that's one big thing you want to avoid when drawing. So it makes your images look really dull. For example, I'll show you really, really quick. So, oops, this is the skin color you have. This like light peachy color, and with this light peachy color, um, like putting black on top of it, just sort of like grays it out. Like no matter what, it just always looks a little dull, dead. I would say it removes a lot of the life from the color. So I'm always going to suggest a darker version. It looks like you've done it here a little bit, but it's just not enough. Usually, what I do is I go with purples, like a really deep purple instead. So you see how you still get that sort of deep, deep shading you want, like right here, but with a more warm tone. Um, it removes the sort of um, the like removing a bunch of the color and the life from it. So basically, what I'm going to do is sort of explain how I would trace this pose. I'm not gonna do like a full rendering or anything just because it'll take a long time, and I'm like very perfectionist. So I'm just going to give some like tips on how to trace better. Um, and so it will help you in the long run when you are doing this stuff on your own. So first, this isn't really a pose I would usually trace just because it is so simple. Usually, if I'm tracing poses or references like that, it's usually because it is something that is a little more difficult for me. I don't have problems with faces, but I do have problems um, like visualizing certain things. Um, so whenever I'm able to trace, it just helps me a little bit to visualize easier and just make a more consistent, I think that's a better word, a more consistent sort of framework for me to work around. So first, this is just how I would trace. I think you did really good on the face, considering it's definitely not the same face here. Uh, but I think you did a really good job with the face. And I think like making it different at least from her face. Um, so when I trace, I do more of a like loose sort of vibe. Um, and this basically allows you to make a few more changes. Like, say, if I wanted to make her an elf or something, I would make those changes like while I'm tracing. So, for example, like if I am making elf ears, I can just extend this ear like visually in my mind, like see like where it's already connected. So I already have like the base of what that ear would look like. And then I just have to extend it out in whatever way I want. I can make little dog ears or cow ears, just in whatever way you want to do. Um, but it allows you to use anatomy that you understand to expand on your abilities. Um, so we will. And usually when I draw too, I prefer, or if I'm tracing a pose, I like to put in certain details that usually aren't in real photos or you don't really see too often, like in reality. So I like to put collarbones a lot. And as a stylized choice, I would probably make her neck thinner just because that's what I prefer visually. So we'll make her neck thinner. And the really good thing about like digital art is just being able to like easily change stuff. So it's not that much of a hassle to change something um, that you feel, just isn't what you want exactly. But I think tracing is, I've traced all my life. Um, it's definitely like I'm almost 40, so um, like when I was younger, I would always like put like a piece of paper up against the window and trace that way to sort of like learn um, and get like a feel for how things should look. And I think when you're teaching yourself art, it's a really, really, really good tool. And I mean, even when I was growing up, like tracing was like looked down on, but it's something that professionals do. It's something that people have done all throughout history. when making art. So it's not something that you need to feel bad about doing. It is just a learning tool, especially if you just use it as a tool. Now, of course, there are people that will, just like any tool that there is, people will um, use it in bad ways and like trace an entire piece and try to claim it all as their own. But that's not what we're doing. That's not how I would ever. The only time I would like all I ever really do is trace poses. That's like what my biggest sort of thing, I guess. Is just trace poses. Um, just because it takes away a lot of the issues I have when starting art. Um, and it's just like deciding what goes where. And if I have like a base that I can play around with, it gets a lot easier and it takes away a lot of time and stress that I have regarding making those types of decisions. It's because I do have ADHD. Um, so I'm already struggling with um, like deciding what to do all the time. So like removing that element is something that helps me a ton when I'm trying to be productive. So it's not an evil tool. It's never been. I understand why people dislike it, and I understand why people would be upset at people misusing it, but I don't think anyone should ever be told not to trace. I do think it's a very useful tool, and I think it's something that people should be allowed to do without feeling shame. So I'm really glad that you made your post and you're very like open about it and your reasonings why. Because I think when people think about art, they think it's this like hard, arduous thing that you have to grind and learn, but you really don't. So there's so many um, innovations now that we shouldn't be struggling to express ourselves. We should still be allowed some grace and just some areas where we can make our own decisions and use tools in the way that we want. And I think that learning learning that and being more comfortable and feeling safe and like we're not being judged or like we're not doing something bad, I think is the biggest and most important thing is like understanding that you aren't doing anything bad and that you simply need to learn the best ways for you to utilize these tools in these areas and how to do things. Okay. Now, with this, what I've been doing is just been tracing the outline of her body. Now, I understand what's going on with like under her dress, but that is something that you want to learn as to what is happening here. Um, this is probably heavily photoshopped. Um, not in a not in a bad way, but it's just when you trace models or like magazine pictures or anything like that, you always want to be aware that the proportions are probably sometimes skewed due to what society wants. And it's mostly from women. So anytime that you are tracing a woman's body, is especially in a publication, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to like have your anatomy feel 100% correct. Sorry, that's my my Tamagotchi's going off. I should have muted him. Um, but here, like her body, I don't know if you can tell, but her chest is this way and her hips are twisted this way because this leg is like moving this way, and it's just like a little strange to look at. And then sometimes some people might not be able to fully understand. Her pelvis is probably a little bit more flat this way, but when you can sort of look at a pose and understand what is happening, it makes it a lot easier for you to make your own changes to make it like your own image, rather than feeling like you are just stealing or um, like the art isn't your own. So once you like understand um, the changes that you can make and within the grasps of anatomy and the reality of that, it makes it a lot easier to make decisions and make it your own. So I'm just sort of like outlining how her body I think would fit here. See, this still looks kind of weird because I personally think that parts of her are probably edited down and edited in a way that like doesn't quite make her proportions look correct. And this is also a corset, so it's also squeezing in a bunch of her curves and stuff that she would normally have if she's not wearing this corset dress. So it makes it a little harder to understand what the anatomy is doing if you don't, of course, understand what is happening underneath. Um, so I'm just going to put those lines there. Okay. Now, I think you did a really good job with sort of, especially with the face. You made it your own. But I like if this was me doing this, I would definitely change a lot about the outfit. I would um maybe do something more flowy or add layers onto the dress just to make the design a little bit more my own and to especially if I'm doing like a character or something would want to utilize like their actual style or whatever else that we're going in through here. Also, another thing is, I think one thing that makes your image look off, something I read in the comments, is Hilary Duff in this image. She's got very warm skin. So that's why the orange works with her skin tone. She's very warm. She's got blue eyeshadow, which matches with the blue in the title. And these black stripes basically help outline her form against this black and white seat and within her white dress as well. So, like this right here oops, is strategically placed. Like this circle, like this place here, is strategically placed to make her waist look smaller. And then her elbow is tucked in to also add shadows here to further pop out the angle of her waist. That's one thing I don't like about using model pictures for art is because most of the time they are positioned so unnaturally that it's not a good way to learn anatomy and it's not a good way to learn how people exist in the world just because it is so pushed to a point to look good. But sorry, I got off on a little tangent there. But what I was gonna say is like since her skin is so warm, like in the original picture, your character here has a more pink undertone. So her undertones aren't yellow and orange. Hers are more pink, which is fine. It's just that that's one reason it looks a little off in the image as a whole. And say if you don't change any of this image at all, what you all I really recommend is if you're using like a program like this is Clip Studio, just do where's it at? Color balance. So any program you have and it has color balance is a huge game changer. Like if you aren't super good at like mixing your colors or finding color theory that you personally like, see, you just have to change the values a little bit. See, already just like pushing that red over a little bit already gives her a bit more warmth in her skin and allows her to look a little bit better in the image as a whole. And let's see. How would I balance this personally? This is probably one of my favorite like steps that I don't and it's like takes it's like once you get the hang of it and you get like your own sort of style, um it helps. It's such a big thing to make your piece look cohesive. Um and it looks so good. Like the end result, like just this is sort of very quick, but just that like few seconds of like shifting these tones a little bit to make them all sort of be a little bit more cohesive with each other without having to like color pick and everything, already sort of adds a bit more depth and cohesion with your image overall. Okay, now we're just gonna go back to this really quick. Okay. Um. Okay. Now, with the if you are still tracing, of course, and like you can see where I've made small changes, and this is just what I would do like personally. Again, just the sort of like lines and stuff that I prefer when drawing. Whenever I do faces as well, I am way more happy to do like my own sort of style with facial features. But if it is something that you struggle with, I think um, finding a balance within your own style and what is realistic is a big help. So, say for example, this is like usually how I do. This is how I've been doing lashes recently. So I just don't really draw the bottom lid, and I just draw lashes. And this helps. This is another thing. Like all of this is whenever you're tracing poses and you're trying to make it your own, what you want to do is understand. You still need to learn anatomy. So when I say that tracing is not bad, that doesn't mean that you still shouldn't learn. You still need to understand what's happening and what you're looking at. And when you understand that, it gets a lot easier to translate images into your own style because you understand what's going on and you understand what will be best to look at and what will be best to express in your own style rather than just drawing what you see. Um, so, for example, like I prefer noses this way rather than having the um, nostrils and everything be drawn out completely. And she has filler in her lips, which is fine, but that makes them look a little bit unnatural. Um, but I would just sort of draw my own, I guess, and allow just like my character or whatever else I'm drawing to more or less come through in the details that really make people different, I guess. Let's see. I really like drawing faces, so it's usually something that I do a lot of, especially with like commissions and everything. So And I think you did a pretty good job with the hair too. Yeah, you did. Your hair was a really good job. And you could tell with your face that you brought it down a little bit more and you did like your own eyes and everything, which is very good. Only thing is like the nose, I would recommend, like I said, learning what's going on there instead of just um, sort of copying what you see. Just because it does get a little bit confusing with time. Um, Hair. I love drawing hair. Like I'm a huge freak when it comes to drawing hair, and I've spent like I was doing a commission the other day, and I spent literally like 7 hours just detailing and drawing lines for hair. Um, but like I would just personally bring out this hair this way. Obviously, if this isn't how your character would have their hair, or that's totally fine as well. But it basically shows you how you can play a little bit more with the pose itself and extend beyond. Um, and I don't really like this chair at all in this picture. It doesn't really make sense why she's on this lawn chair, this pool chair, in this tight corset dress with this like lavish necklace. So it doesn't really make sense to me. But that's fine. Because then I would just like make this a pillow instead. Um, and I would just like make this flat instead of insinuating that it's like lifted up. So I would just make it so that she's like actually laying down rather than slightly propped up, I guess. Oops. But that being said, I do think you did a really good job, especially if it is your first time. Ignore this. This is just quick, but especially if it's your first time doing digital art, I would say definitely sort of start making your own decisions. If you are tracing, and then basically just learn what's happening underneath. Um, and when you learn what's happening and have some more like confidence in your lines, um, and start to like um, just start to develop your own style from there, it gets a lot easier in deciding what you want to keep from a pose. If you are tracing a pose, it gets a lot easier to sort of know what you're looking for in those poses. And um, basically, it just helps a lot just to like learn what you're looking at and why you're looking at it. And yeah, I hope this helps. I'll upload this. If you have any more questions, just feel free to reach out. I don't mind helping. I love helping. And this is a new Reddit account I made specifically for this purpose. So yeah, I'm definitely going to start making these more often, hopefully. But yeah, thanks. Um, and yeah, have a good day.